Thanks for joining us. This training is going to be part one of a series on drip sequences. And in this video, we're going to talk about understanding and using these automated drip sequences, how they work, how to turn them on. In future videos, we're going to talk about like how to edit the wording that goes out, or if you want to create your new own drip sequence, how to do that. But we're going to just focus on understanding the basic layout of it and how to use it here today. Now, if you're not familiar with a drip sequence, that's what we call it here at the Podio Powerhouse Max acquisition software. Other people would call it maybe an automated follow-up campaign or autoresponders. These are all really the same thing. It's when we tell the computer to send out scheduled messages for us to try and reach out and contact the lead that we are interested in pursuing. So here in Podio Powerhouse Max, really this all gets managed from the Seller Leads app, but we have to understand the back end of it before we come here. So I'm going to come and hit this little arrow to drop down, and we're going to see our drip sequence tracker and our message templates. These two apps are a big piece going together here. So in the drip sequence tracker, this is somewhere where you're not going to be coming all that often, okay? But you can use this just to kind of see a quick summary of your sequences. So for example, we have our vacant sequence. There's 8 messages that go out in it. Takes 56 days to complete it based on the schedule of those 8 messages. How many leads are currently using it? Well, 0 right now. I haven't turned any on to that particular one. But in here, all you really see is, okay, name the drip sequence. And this little instructions flag is just helping so that if you're setting up a new one, you know what to do. We'll talk about that in another training. These stats just automatically fill in, but you do have to say, okay, what is the very first message that goes out? And that's the bridge that connects us from our overall title of the sequence into those building blocks which exist in the message templates app. And that's where all the individual message building blocks say, okay, here's the first one. After we do that, here's the second one. So let's hop in and look at the layout. This again is somewhere you won't come that often, only if you're editing or changing your sequences, but you need to know what to expect or what you're looking at here. So you can see, you can use these filters to look at just a specific one. If you want to look at your cold lead sequence, you click on that. Okay, we've got the action 1, 2, 3. You can go through any of those specifically, okay? And what's happening here, if we just click on this first one, we have the ability here to give it a title. So this is our divorce action 1. This belongs in that divorce sequence. Okay, that's a connection to that drip sequence tracker that we already titled it as. And then for this particular building block, it says we want to send a text and an email. Now you have some options for setting up slide broadcast, ringless voicemail drops, or personal tasks that tell your acquisition agent, hey, you need to call this lead again. But in this example, it's just a text and an email that's been scheduled. So we can see, okay, here is the text message that would go out. And notice these words in brackets here. So the templates that you get, they have these variables that are inserted. And it's going to replace things in this message with the proper pieces from the lead that it's going out on. So that seller's name and the address city that they're logged in. Your agent's full name and phone number will be appended here. Then down in the body of the email has that. Now, I'm going to skip down real quick to the bottom just as we talk about these variables. If you're ever editing or building your own, you need to know you can only use variables listed right here because the computer backend is programmed to look for those, and it knows, well, what do I put in here for company phone? How do I find that and replace it? And if you type it different, even if you put a space in that, it's not going to find it and replace the right thing, and your message is going to go out looking just like that and look funny to your lead. Okay, so be very careful with those variables. Make sure they match what's in here. And let's just talk about a couple of them for a minute, because there are things like company phone. That's a good example of, well, why would I need to type in a variable when I could just type in 555-666-7788? You could type your number directly. It's something that actually commonly we see, that companies change a phone line, or they want to use a different tracking number for their automated follow-ups. And if you have hundreds of messages, so like right here, okay, we've got 74, and you might build more. And if you have to go click in each and every one of those just because you changed a business phone number, then it takes a lot of effort. Whereas if you use that variable, then that variable just goes and looks in your configuration app to say, what's the number to use? And it plugs it in. So you could change it in one spot, and that variable will be dynamic to use it moving forward. Okay. Now, each of these pieces, as you finish what you want, your text, your email, modify, type in whatever you want in these pieces, right? We'll talk about slide broadcasts and tasks another time in a minute. Then you have to come down here and you have to say, okay, how many days later do we want to send the next message? So default here is 7. And what is the next message that goes out? Well, this is message 1, so the next one is going to be message 2 or action 2 for our divorce sequence. And it just strings all of these things together. And you could click on that one. It now pops you over to divorce action 2, has the stuff laid out for it. And it says 7 days after that, let's send action 3. And they're all connected together in that way until it gets to the end of it. And you have a choice on that last one where you could just let it be done. Hey, we ran all the way through and we're done. Or some people say, you know what? If I get to that last one, I would like to have it loop back and start at the beginning again, send the first message again. So you could come here and you can say, okay, for action 8, when it gets down and finishes this one, 7 days later, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send my divorce action 1. I'm just going to find that in my list here. And I've now set that as a loop. So until this person unsubscribes or you cancel the sequence or you change anything, it is going to just loop over and over, sending them this series of messages. Okay. But now that you have an understanding or kind of see how we set up, or we have our sequence tracker, that title that says what's the first message, and that brings us over here into our templates, which chains together one message at a time. Now it's time for us to go take a look at how we actually use these messages. Okay, we're going to open the Seller Leads app, and in Seller Leads, I'm just going to pick one of these that might be a lead we're trying to contact. So, okay, it's on touch 7. I do my touch 8, can't reach them, and I may say, you know what, I'm done with this one, I'm done trying. You come down and you have your drip campaign section right here. And at the beginning, the only field you see is select which campaign sequence to start. So you come here, you click on this, and you say, is this a vacant property, or is this a divorce scenario? Is this one that's a tired landlord? Whatever it is, cold lead, warm lead, whatever you wanted to choose, you're going to come in, pick your sequence right here. Okay, so I'll just hit the vacant sequence. And once you click that, it's going to start some automations that fill out a couple other things on this page and get that loaded up. So we'll give Podio just a second to load that, and then we'll take a look at what it has. Okay, so we can see after we selected that we want that vacant campaign to start. It ran, it got some other details for us, and it said, okay, confirmed that vacant drip sequence has been scheduled to begin tomorrow for this lead. And the reason it always starts the next day is because when these messages go out, Podio does it as a batch. So you can set your system, whether it's 10 a.m., 11 a.m., whatever time each day, it says what drip messages need to happen, and it goes out. And if you came later in the afternoon and started a sequence and it tried to put it in that day's batch, but it already missed the train, then that one would get left behind. So by default, it says, all right, this one is going to start that next business day. Notice we do have, to avoid sending on weekends, it's going to bump it forward. So this one bumped it forward to go out on a Monday. And that just helps so that you're not sending out messages. And really, if you get someone that responds on the weekend, but then you don't have any staff in the office working, then you might get their interest piqued and lose them before you show up and answer. So if you do want to send on weekends, just so you know, that is a setting that you can control by going over to your configuration app. And in the configuration app, it's going to ask you, if you scroll down to the other settings area or additional settings, it has a question here: should drip campaign auto messages be allowed to send on weekends? Default is no. We want to send it on weekdays only. But if you're like, you know what, we have somebody working all the time, we'll respond, you can say, yes, we're okay. And then it's not going to change that. But we had the setting at no. Therefore, this one bumped it forward for us. Okay. Anyhow, it says pending on our status because it hasn't gone out yet, or hasn't actually sent or started anything yet. But once that day rolls around at our predetermined time, it's going to say, okay, what message needs to go out? And it's going to see this one and go, okay, the vacant action 1 needs to go out. It will send that, and then it looks on that one to say what comes next, vacant action 2, and it will just continue to send it in a loop. You have some options on your drip sequence status where you can check and say how many leads has a sequence running right now, or sequence paused happens if anybody responds. The computer instantly pauses the drip sequence because they may have responded with, you know, take me off your list, unsubscribe. Or they may have responded with, yes, I'm interested. Or maybe you get those responses that are like automatic from someone that's like, hey, I'm driving right now, can't reply. Well, you want to keep reaching out to them in the future, but the computer isn't sure which type of wording came back. So it pauses it. And if you ever see anything in sequence paused, you have to look at the history, look at whatever happened, and decide, you know what, let's keep it running, or let's go ahead and cancel it. They don't want to hear from us. Okay, so that's what those buttons are for. Sequence completed is just to indicate for you, hey, this went the whole time. We never got any action from them, and it's over. Okay, this button, pretty self-explanatory. You can test that sequence by telling it, hey, don't wait for the next batch of these to go out. Let's send it right now. I'm going to go ahead and click that button so we can see what happens on this page. So by clicking that, it triggers the system to say, for this lead and only this lead, let's go ahead and send out whatever we had scheduled and then update so that it's going to move to the next one. So we'll give Podio just a second for that to load and then take a look at what changes when that occurs. Okay, so we can see right here that it tells us, hey, we're going to send this out immediately because someone clicked that test button. And then we see the exact message that's being sent as a text out to our customer. If there's an email included, it also tells us, hey, we sent that follow-up email as well. Okay, now I'm going to hit refresh on the page. One thing when you're using Podio, things that you trigger like that sometimes need a page refresh so that you can visually see what changes the automations did. But we can see right here that it's now marked as, hey, this is running. It's now saying the next thing is going to be action 2, and it's updated the date for whatever schedule that was for that one to go out. So that will continue to run. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to do anything. This lead is now on that autoresponder drip campaign, and it'll just sit here until that next date, look what needs to happen, run with it, and continue to go through unless the sequence gets paused because they respond, or you cancel it. And if you do reach them on the phone, or if they call back, any reason that you need, you can come here and say cancel, And when you cancel that sequence, it's just going to wipe out any of those steps so that there's no future action happening. And then as soon as that update occurs and we refresh the page, we're not going to see all of this stuff in our drip campaign settings. We're going to be back to where we started, where it just has a blank spot saying, hey, choose if you want to start a new one. Okay, so we'll pause for just a second to watch how that happens. And here we go. We can now see the automations ran. It wiped out those other fields saying we don't have a next drip message. We don't have a date it needs to happen. This is back down to just a blank, hey, select if you want to start one. And you can always choose one from there to begin and start a new drip campaign if you want. Now, quick side note, those other fields that at the moment you're not seeing, those are what we call hidden fields in Podio. If you ever want to check your hidden fields, there's two ways to do it. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you're going to find a little option right above the file attachments that says show hidden fields. And if you click that, it will pop open those hidden fields. Okay. The other way is without scrolling to the bottom, anywhere you are on the page, if you click over in this gray bar over here and hit the letter H on your keyboard, that's going to toggle the hidden hide or unhide for those hidden fields. This is what we typically see in drip campaigns unless we're using it. Then we see these other status and other settings here. So just wanted to point that out so you can see it. And that's all as far as using those drip sequences. Come to your seller leads, run it from here, as long as you know what the other apps are doing for how it gathers and sends those messages. Stay tuned for the next training where we're going to talk about how we can monitor what drip sequences are running, or how we can edit them, how we can create new ones. All of those are coming up, and we're excited to review that with you. Thanks.